Emily discovers she's in a world of werewolves, and those she trusts might be part of this mysterious race. How will she face this astonishing truth, and its impact on her life? If everyone around her is a werewolf, where does her true belonging lie? Are you ready to dive into a world of mystery and romance? Subscribe now to join Emily on her thrilling journey. 26 Emily's P.O.V. I felt my heart pace speed up as I felt like my head was spinning. It felt as though what I had just witnessed was fake, out of a movie, but it happened clear as day. A boy turned into a beast. It couldn't be possible. That only happened in bloody Twilight, not in real life. It had to be staged. They were trying to mess with me, play a sick cruel joke on me just to get me scared and get a reaction. Emily, what you just seen, it's normal, all right? Well, not normal for you, normal for us. Just take a minute and calm down. I will explain everything, Tom mumbled as I felt his hand on my shoulder attempting to calm me down. Normal? What did he mean it was normal for him? Last time I looked, humans were humans, and that was that. There was no bloody breaking bones and turning into a werewolf all of a sudden. I quickly jumped back out of his grasp. If that boy had just turned into that monster, was he one as well? Is that what Four had been hiding from me? Was he one of these beasts as well? Calm down. You expect me to watch that and be calm? Stop messing with me, I'm not joking. You said Four was a monster, but you're a sick wanker for showing me that and lying to me. I raged. I didn't want to believe him. How could I even believe him? I think I would know if Four was a bloody dog. After all, I was with him for months. I want to help you understand. I knew if I didn't show you, you would never believe me. It's not a joke. You think I would joke about something like this? Tom's now slightly irritated voice questioned, as he took steps towards me. Stop. Stop talking, stop coming near me, I screamed. I didn't want a monster to touch me, never mind talk to me. Tom stared at me, his eyes showing no remorse for what he had just showed me. It's almost like he wanted this to wreck me. He knew this would do this to me, yet he still showed me. I thought he was bloody nice. Tom nodded slowly, saying nothing else before he dug his hand into his pocket, pulling out his phone. Here, call your family. Talk to them, but please don't tell them of what you just saw. I'll give you time to come to terms with that, and when you're ready I'll explain everything to you, all right? He mumbled as he leaned his hand out, handing me his phone. I stared at the phone. I hadn't talked to my family in months. Four wouldn't even think of letting me see them, never mind talk to them. I looked at Tom before I stared at the phone. No matter how much I wanted to scream and hit him for what he had just exposed me to, I wasn't going to miss the opportunity to talk to my family. I wiped the tear away that hadn't stopped flowing down my face as soon as I heard the familiar voice of my parents on the other side of the phone. After 2 hours of me mostly crying and my parents crying, the call was over. Tom's phone had run out of battery. Suspiciously, they didn't ask where I was, they just wanted to know if I was all right, if I'd been hurt. Mentally, yes. Physically, not really. That sparked the question in my mind, did they know? My grandma must have knew something, as she knew Dylan. Did she tell them? Is that why they never got the police involved? They both sounded so broken almost. I hadn't thought from their side what it would have been like to have their daughter ripped away from them in a blink in the eye and not being able to do a thing about it. I still wanted to talk to so many people. My brother had been gone at the time I rang. If it wasn't for Tom's phone dying, I wouldn't have ended the call. I had so much stuff I wanted to say, but yet my mind went blank when talking to them. I pulled myself off the floor, the previous events coming back into my mind. For 2 hours I had forgot. It was like I was escaping reality, and now I was back with thousands of questions. I was living amongst werewolves. How did I not know? How did Four manage to keep that a secret from me? I slept in a bed with a werewolf, I kissed a werewolf, I kissed a dog. Suddenly the door opened and in came Damon, with a tray of food in his hand, smiling, but underneath, that was a beast, someone that could easily rip me apart. You all right? I brought you some soup. Thought you might be a bit hungry, after all that. He smiled. He looked so innocent as he placed the Gary before me and sitting down. I eyed him up and down. How could such a thing be possible? Did that mean Twilight was real? Vampires were real too. Were these people born like that, or did someone have to bite them so they could become a werewolf? I'm not going to bite you. Sorry. Too soon. He stopped joking after he realized I wasn't finding any of it funny. How could he joke knowing that my world had just been flipped upside down? I looked down at the food. I couldn't trust anyone anymore. Not even Dylan. I thought he really cared for me, but turns out he was a lying monster like everyone else. Emily, please don't hate us for what we showed you. For he kept you in the dark about these things. He lied to you. He didn't tell you who he really was. We want your trust, and we want you to know that we won't lie to you. If we were to fully gain your trust, we had to show you who we really were. Damon sighed as he set the books he carried in beside the tray. Plus tell Tom this, but he can be a little intense sometimes. I could have just told you. I'm sure you would have been less scared, he continued. Damon seemed harmless, as did Ali, but I thought that about Dylan as well. Damon could have been just trying to get on my good side until he decided when he was going to eat me. These books, they will tell you everything you need to know. Call me or Ali. Wait, no, just call me if you need anything. I'm sure I'll be about somewhere. Damon sighed before standing up to his full height. I stared down at the books. I didn't know if I wanted to find out more, but then again, what could shock me more? My eyes furiously scanned the pages, as each page I read shocked me even more. In the werewolf community there are different packs. Each pack has an alpha who is the leader, a beta who helps the alpha and steps in when he's gone, and a gamma who also helps. They are all in packs, like a pack of wolves, only they are people. Another thing that shocked me that I had to read the page twice to see if I was imagining it was that these wolves can communicate through their minds. They can mind link each other. Also, majority of the people are born into it. They have their first shift at the age of 18. If I didn't know any better, it was like I reading a fiction book, not a proper textbook with accurate information. The thing I was currently reading was about mates. Each werewolf had one somewhere. Mates are paired together by the moon goddess, whoever that was. Basically, whoever your mate was, you had to be with them whether you liked it or not. I felt my eyes become heavy as I peered out the window. It was now pitch black outside. God knows how long I have been reading from. The soup that Damon had brought me was now cold. I had forgot about it as soon as I pulled out one of the books he had left me. All this information was shocking me. Emily, you've been in here for hours, love. Do you want to go on a walk? Tom's voice caused me to snap my head up to see him standing directly above me. I didn't even hear him come on. I wasn't sure how I felt about this yet. I knew there was nothing I could do about it. I was surrounded by wolves. I pulled the jumper Adam had handed me closer to my body, as the wind began to pick up, blowing my hair that I threw into a bun into my face. 5 minutes into the walk, and none of us had spoken a word. I just enjoyed my surroundings. I hadn't been outside in so long. I didn't want the werewolf thing to ruin it for me. I'm sorry if I scared you earlier. Tom broke the silence. I turned to see that he was looking down at his feet as we walked. Are you? I questioned. By the sounds of it, he didn't seem that sorry for showing me. If anything, he thought he was doing me a favor, and maybe he was. I probably wouldn't have believed him if he didn't. He looked up at me before a small smile formed on his face, and he began shaking his head. Tom seemed nice. He wasn't the average kidnapper that locked you in a room and kept you from your family. Instead, he let me go anywhere and let me talk to my family, more than 4 did. Okay, so what are you in your pack? I asked. It felt weird asking these types of questions that I never thought I'd be asking. I'm the alpha, Damon is the beta, and Ali is the gamma, for he is the alpha of his pack. You've probably never met his beta before, he explained. Unlike 4, Tom told me the truth. Do you have a mate? It felt weird asking that. I have used the word mate many times. It means friend where I'm from, but here it literally means the person you're meant to be with. Tom remained silent for a few seconds and Ed like he was debating on whether he wanted to answer that one. I had one, she looked like you. Short, brown hair, looked like she was bloody made by the moon goddess herself. Tom's voice was laced with sadness. I wondered what happened for her, but knowing that patience wasn't a trait a lot of werewolves, had I decided it would be better to leave it alone. How do you know if you have one? I asked, that it didn't say in the books how you know who's your mate. Do you suddenly look into someone's eyes and then it clicks in your head that's your mate? For me it was as soon as I laid eyes on her, thoughts of your mate just consume you, everything about them is perfect. Everything mates touch it's like a spark of electricity, you just realize, Tom explained, his words clicked in my head. Every time he bloody touched me it would feel like I just got shocked, no matter how hard I try to hate him the feeling my stomach has tells me otherwise. Every time I look into his eyes I forget about his shitty personality. That's when I realized and I were mates. 27 Emily's P.O.V. I was a mate. I had a mate, and not the friend type of mate, I had the type of one, who you were destined to be with for the rest of your life, paired together by some sort of fate, that you had no choice to take part in. Human or not, if you had a mate then you could say goodbye to your family, your plans for the rest of your life, and really having any sort of control over any decision you now made. That's what did to me. He took me away from everyone I knew and loved. He kept me locked up in his room for months without even mentioning the fact that, by the way, I'm a werewolf. He ruined all my plans I had for my future, finishing school, applying to university I will never get to experience. Driving for the first time, crashing my parents' car for the first time, getting rejected from university I will never get to do. I'm stuck with him, and it's not the case anymore where in my brain I thought that he had mental problems and had kidnapped me out of spite, still questioning that. But now instead of dreaming for the day I would get out, I know that I can never leave him, he was the rest of my life. Probably didn't like it at first either, I mean, he was probably disappointed at having a human mate, maybe that's why he was so harsh to me. His whole life he had this idea of having a strong mate, someone who wanted this life, and then I was thrown there. I should feel upset, sad, and I did for the first couple of hours, but then my anger set in, at Dylan, and my grandma. She's had to known that they were both wolves, and how she allowed me to come visit in the first place knowing the risk that she was taking surprised me. Dylan, I thought he would have at least let something out about the secret life he lived, and I spent 24 hours with him. I feel stupid for not noticing. The feelings I felt towards him, the sparks whenever he would touch me, the butterflies I would feel in the pit of my stomach every time I looked at him, it wasn't me, it wasn't my fault, it was the mate pool. Even now, I should feel happy that I was away from him, that for once he wasn't breathing down my neck, but all I wanted was for him to wrap his arms around me, and his breathing calm me down. Just knowing his presence was near made me feel protected, and now that he wasn't here I felt exposed. I shook my head angry at myself. It wasn't me that wanted it was the mate pool. Thoughts of him consumed me, but I couldn't let this stupid mate thing get the better of me. It changed nothing. Still snatched me from my room and did all those horrible things to me. He wasn't doing it out of love, all he wanted was his mate. I groaned as a pounding pain erupted from my head, as I pulled myself out of the bed that I had just spent most of the day in. Damon and Ali had came up a few times, just checking up on me, giving me food. I made my way over to the window, staring out all the people, or wolves that wandered about the grass. I wondered if all packs were like this, what was Four's like? Emily, you haven't left your room all day, Damon just informed me, are you all right? Tom's voice surprised me as I spun around to see him leaning against the wall. I didn't even hear him come in. I still wasn't sure on Tom yet. He seemed nice, I mean he did give a bed in his house, give me clothes and food, but I couldn't shake off the fact that his presence made my skin crawl. I'm fine, just tired, I lied. I wasn't fine, and I defiantly wasn't tried. How could someone possibly be fine after their whole world was just flipped upside down? How could someone be fine when they have just realized that their kidnapper is basically their husband? He nodded before coming to stand beside me. I held my breath, as I felt his hand come ink intact with my brown hair combing a piece of it out. "Tell me about Four. I want to know about his pack," I spoke, quickly moving and making my way over to the bed. I didn't like when he touched me, or when anyone touched me, not knowing that they were in fact animals. "It's plain and simple, Emily. Four is an alpha of an extremely large and powerful pack. Bloodstone pack. They attack, kill, terrorize innocent packs for the fun of it, murdering tens of thousands of children and women. Four is a murderer, and I can't help but pity you, as no one should be burdened with being his mate. Everyone in that pack since birth is brought up to kill, no mercy is shown by any one of them. If you weren't his mate, I'm sure you'd be gone. Not one person in that pack has a heart." His words made tears burn at the back of my eyes as disbelief washed over me. I shook my head. This can't be true. Four wouldn't be capable of such acts. He would carry out such doings. Dylan, there wasn't a bad bone in his body. This all had to be lies or rumors. I know it's hard to hear, Emily, but we want to help you. You live in constant danger with Four. He has enemies all over, and to get to him they will use you, and we don't want to see another person die at the hands of Four," Tom continued. I wanted him to stop talking, but at the same time these were the answers I'd wanted for months. "It's easy. Four has made sure to already mark you, but to undo the mate bond between you and him, you sleep with me." Tom carried on, now sitting only a few centimeters from my face, his hand reaching out and wiping away the tears. I felt my heart rate speed up. Even the thought of Tom's body on me wanted me to be sick. I didn't want to believe him, but somehow his words were now imprinted in my mind, and images of Four killing innocent people, and then coming home and laying with me in bed haunted my mind. "What do you get out of it?" I questioned through my sobs. "Four took away something that I will never be able to get back. He killed my mate Teresa. I'd only just met her when his pack attacked, and she was one of the victims. I want revenge on him, but I could never hurt an innocent human who had no idea of what Four was really like," Tom explained. My head felt like it was spinning. This was my only way out. I had no choice. I squeezed my eyes shut as a sick feeling that had settled in my stomach only grew, as I felt his hot breath fan my neck, making me want to push him off me straight away. I tried to imagine I was somewhere else, like back at home with Kyle fighting over the remote. I felt his hands begin to unbutton my top, as I had to dig my nails in my hands at the disgust that I had felt. This didn't feel right. It should be easy, sleep with Tom and no more Four. But it wasn't. For some reason all I wanted now was Four. I felt my heart rate speed up. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want my first time being with Tom, someone I had only met, and just to a part of some revenge plot. "Tom, I changed my mind. I don't want to do this," I breathed out, as his heavy weight on top of me only added to my anger, as I placed my hands on his chest attempting to push him off. "I'm doing you a favor, Emily. You'll thank me for this." Tom shook my comments off as his hands pushed mine away, and continued buttoning my top down. My eyes widened as I realized that he wasn't listening to me. He was much stronger than me. How was I meant to get him to stop? Surely he wouldn't do such a thing. I said no. I snapped, pulling my body from underneath him only for him to release a growl, and his hands grip onto my waist, yanking me down as he tore my top off. I felt tears burn at the side of my eyes as Kay frantically attempted to push his hands off, only for him to grab hold of them with one of his other hands. This was it. It was actually going to happen, and I could do nothing to stop him. "Get the hell off her before I rip your throat," the all-too-familiar voice of Dylan growled, and in an instant the weight of Tom's body came flying of me. My eyes widened as I blinked just to make sure I wasn't seeing things. Dylan was the last Perks I expected to show up. His eyes met with mine only for a moment before he rushed towards Tom, throwing his body on top of his, which was only beginning to rise from the floor. Tears continued to flow before me as I just stared at the scene playing out before me. Daikon was on top of Tom, pounding his fists into him. I literally thought I seen steam come out of his ears. I was froze in my place, not able to move. A minute ago, I was on the verge of being raped, and now I'm watching the guy being killed. Tom's words haunted me. Everyone in his pack are brought up to kill, and Dylan was no exception. Maybe I should have let Tom do it. It was safe me from the other monsters. I pulled my shaky body off the bed, trying not to make any noise other than the groans that Tom was letting out. Only my shaky hand banged into the lamp, shattering it to the ground, causing Dylan to look up at me. I once looked at Dylan like he was the only one that could save me. I thought he out of all people cared about me and was innocent, but the blood that splattered his face and arms told me otherwise. Emily. Are you all right? Did he touch you? Dylan's frantic voice filled the room, as he stood up from Tom's now bloody body that had gone quiet. Did you just kill him? I panicked as I stared at Tom's non-moving body, as it lay limp on the floor, before flashing to Dylan to see confusion written on his face, as he began to make his way towards me. Don't come near me, Dylan, I warned. I didn't know who he was anymore. I couldn't trust him. My eyes flashed out the window, only for my heart to drop further, as previously people running around and laughing was now filled with terror, fighting. I watched as people transformed into beasts, each time pouncing on top of another like a pack of dogs. Emily, please don't look at that, Dylan pleaded, but his voice no longer brought me comfort, as it used to do. It only reminded me of what he just done a few seconds ago. I never thought I'd hear myself say it, but I wanted his hands to take away the thought of Tom's hands being all over me. I looked back at Dylan. He wasn't so innocent. I thought For was the bad one and that Daikon was the good brother, but how could he be so calm about what he just did? I took a deep breath before my eyes flashed towards the door, and without thinking I bolted out, my legs running down the familiar corridor that I had walked down with Damon and Ali multiple times. I pulled open the door only for it to be pushed open at the same time, causing me to be pushed back as the person on the other side was stronger. I regained my balance before my eyes flashed up to meet the eyes of someone who an hour ago I never wanted to see again, but now wanted to see more than ever. Before I could open my mouth to speak, his arms reached out, his hands gripping onto my bare waist due to Tom pulling my top off, only leaving me in a bra. Tingles shot up down where he touched as he pulled me into his hoodie-covered chest, as his hand left my waist, the other one holding me up, as he wiped away the tears that had not stopped falling down my face, only his heavy breathing to be heard. Before I could think, he placed his hand on my cheek, my eyes dropping to his lips that for once I wanted so badly just to touch. So before I could stop myself and second think it, I leaned towards him and placed my lips on top of his, sending waves of shocks throughout my whole body, and for once I didn't push him away, knowing this is what I needed right now. I needed For. 28 Emily's P.O.V. You're okay now, love. Please don't cry, For's soothing voice mumbled in my ear, as I buried my face in his chest, his thumb reaching and wiping away the tears that hasn't stopped flowing down my face. I couldn't stop shaking even when For handed me his hoodie. I was still shaking, not from being cold, but from the events that only took place moments ago. I was almost raped, Dylan killed a man, and I was now back with For, someone who I'd never thought I'd see again. For the past 5 minutes For had been attempting to get me to stop cryjng and to calm down, but all I could think of was his heavy weight on top of me, as I pushed at his chest, but he didn't budge. I wasn't strong enough for him. For had pushed open the door to one of the rooms, quickly setting me down on the bed that was placed in the center, quickly making his way over to the window, shutting the curtains, as if he was still trying to block me from the secret that I already knew. I want you to tell me what happened. I can't help you if I don't know. For kneeled down in front of me, placing his warm hands on my knees, sending shocks up and down them, which instead of disgusting me like they used to, I accepted them. It helped me calm down. I shook my head. I didn't want to say the words out loud. I didn't want to relive it everyone again. If it was up to me, I'd just pretend nothing ever happened, and in the morning I will just move on and forget about it. For's face reddened slightly as he took deep breaths, as if he had to stop himself for shouting at me, until his head snapped to the door, which quickly slammed open to reveal a boy who I didn't particularly want to see. For the pack has been overthrown. Finn needs further instructions on what to do next. Dylan didn't look at me once as he made his way over closer to the bed. He was acting normal, like not just a couple minutes ago. he had just wrapped his hands around another human's throat and killed them. Just like that. That's when Tom's words rang in my head. For was a murderer, who killed innocent children, women and men, and from what I'd just seen Dylan wasn't any better. But I couldn't trust Tom's words. Was he just saying that so if give him what he wanted? So I would start to trust him so he could get to me. For glanced at me, his eyes softening slightly before he regained to his full height, his hand reaching out to wipe the tears that were still on my face, before he leaned down, planting a short kiss on my lips. Dylan's going to bring you to the car. I'll be there soon as I can, For stated before he turned around to face Dylan walking towards the door about to leave. My eyes widened when I realized he was going to leave me alone with Dylan. Any other time, I was be glad I was with Dylan, but now that I had just seen him doing what he just done, I don't think I can look at him the same again. I thought he was so innocent, that he out of everyone in For's pack would have a bit of kindness in him. Maybe what Damon and Ali told me is true, maybe everything I was told about For and his pack was true. No, I don't want to go anywhere with you, I stuttered through my sniffles. They were making me doubt myself now. I thought I was safe with Tom, but it turns out he was sick. What if they were just like him? For stared at me, his eyebrows furrowing in confusion, as just minutes ago, I was letting him kiss me, now I refused to go with Dylan. His eyes then flashed to Dylan, the bright blue color now looking glazed over, as he seemed to be having a conversation with him in his head. I remembered reading about this. Werewolves could mind link each other. Suddenly For's calm stance turned into one that was the opposite of calm. His face started to get redder, as his bare arms started to fist up, as he clenched them so tight each vein looked like it was about to pop before the glazed look left his eyes, and his eyes snapped to mine. That bastard almost arsped you, he growled out before he began to take strides over to me. I could hear his heavy panting before I thought he was going to get mad at me, only his hand reached out, taking a hold of mine and pulling me up so I was in his chest again. I'm sorry, his voice sounding different, muffled by my hair, as he tightened his hold around me. Being in his arms made me feel secure. I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't his fault, he didn't have any part in it. I squeezed my eyes shut and pulled the hood over my ears, attempting to block out the screams and the cries coming outside. It's now been around a half an hour waiting in the car. Dylan basically threw me over his shoulder after I refused to go with him and walked me out to the car. As I was outside, I got glimpses of the horror that was going on. We were now sat in the car, the blackout windows preventing me from seeing what was going on, but the screams and shouts indicated what was going on. People were crying, screaming, and shouting. I wanted to do something. I wanted to check on Damon and Ali. I could maybe persuade Dylan, but in the front seats sat two men who remained silent the whole time. Was Tom's words true? Was For out there right now taking part in this, killing innocent people? I didn't want to believe Tom. His words now meant nothing to me, but after seeing Dylan so easily do what he done, and no think twice to deem me otherwise. Yes, I probably know he only did what he did because he was trying to protect me, but he didn't have to go so far. The only noise in the car was my sniffling and my sobs every couple of minutes, when I would hear another person cry out for help. Dylan remained silent, his gaze in me as I stared ahead, trying to block out the sounds. Suddenly the door beside me was pulled open, making my head snap up to see For with a man standing beside him. My eyebrows furrowed in confusion when he reached out and grabbed me from my seat. My eyes flashed down to see his hands covered in dried-up red and bruises, making Tom's words ring in my head again. The cold night air hit my bare legs as For pulled me into his warm chest, his hand on the back of my neck, as his heavy breathing filled the air. Dylan, go get the other car. We are staying in the hotel tonight. The land is available. For stern commands to his brother, making Dylan not hesitate and quickly follow through with the actions. I sighed a breath of relief when Dylan left. Every second in that car made me want to turn around and start screaming at him, asking him why he just did that and how he was so okay with it. For then moved his hands to my waist as he quickly pushed me into the car that I was once in. Shutting the door, the screams were no longer, and it was just silent, other than now the two men in the front of the car were speaking to each other. Love, you don't have to cry, "You're okay now," Four's voice soothed, as his hand reached up wiping the tears I didn't even realize were flowing down my face. There was so much I wanted to say, scream even, but nothing would come out. It felt as if my mind was screaming, but my mouth wasn't working. I wanted to hit him for keeping the secret from me for all those months. "Dylan killed Tom," was all I managed to mumble out as I stared at the ground. I didn't want him to respond, yet I was waiting for him to say something that would help me, like Dylan didn't kill another person. His silence only made it confirmed, making me just shut down. I let out a sob as I felt his warm arms pull me into his side, as his hands gently stroked my hair. 29 Emily's P.O.V. "We should be back in a couple of hours. We are leaving now to get back on the road. Make sure the borders are covered at all times. Any problems, contact Finn." Four's irritated voice sighed from the room. I took a deep breath, leaning against the locked bathroom door, closing my eyes for a brief second. Not a wink of sleep I got last night. Every time I shut my eyes I seen Tom, his sick face staring at my own. Between that and Four constantly asking if I was all right, I got no sleep. "Baby, are you ready?" Four's voice asked, his fist knocking on the bathroom door, making me jump. I didn't understand why he was being nice to me. Maybe it was because I was being a little bit less of a brat, or he felt sorry for me. I quickly glanced at my reflection, cringing at the result. My hair was an absolute mess, my face stained with tears, and the joggers Four had gave me looking like a blanket. As soon as we got into the room last night, he demanded I changed from the clothes I got there. I didn't mind, it's just for once I had clothes that fit me and that weren't massive. I turned quickly, unlocking the door. At some point I think Four was going to snap me for something. As soon as I opened the door, his hand reached out to grab mine, as his eyes looked over at me before he raised his eyes at the tank top I was still wearing. Most of the morning he had tried to get me to change from it, but it was roasting. I shifted quickly, pulling on my seatbelt, as now it was only Four and I in one of the cars, Four driving and me in the passenger. I think I preferred the other men in the car. It meant that I didn't have to talk. My eyes glanced to Four to see his hands on the wheel, only his eyes looked glazed over. He was talking to someone else through Kind Link. He still didn't know that I knew his secret. "How did you find me?" I asked, attempting to snap him out of his mind link phase. I wanted to see if he was going to tell me anything, yet if he was going to tell the truth. "I knew Tom. I figured out his hiding spot," Four carefully answered, glancing over at me, his bright blue eyes looking bright, as he started up the car. He was careful not to say too much. He wasn't lying, but he also wasn't telling me the honest truth. He was taking out the parts where I'm guessing he sent wolves to track him or something. But how? I mean, he didn't leave any clues as to where he was, and he wasn't hiding, I questioned, as I watched as Four's hand grip onto the wheel tighter, his knuckles slightly turning white. I knew he hated it when I asked questions. He was so impatient that he probably didn't have time to answer me. "Trust me, love, I was always going to find you," he mumbled out, before taking his eyes of mine and onto the road as he pulled out of the parking spot. His jaw was clenched tightly and his chest was moving up and down. I knew he was trying his best not to snap at me. If this were a few weeks ago, he's probably just ignore me, but he's trying. I so badly just wanted to tell him that I knew about what he really was. Maybe then he would let me ring my family, let me actually be outside and not stuck up in the room. If I already know, then he can't hide anything else from me. "I know your secret," my mouth blurted out before I could even stop myself. In an instant the car jolted to a stop, and I instantly regretted my confession, wishing I could have gave it more than 5 seconds of thought. "What did you just say?" Emily Four's chilling voice asked. He already knew what I said. He was just checking to see if I was going to say it again or not. I turned to him to see his eyes staring into my own, his once blue eyes now turning into speaks of gold. I knew this was bad. Whenever his eyes did this, he got very angry. "Forget it," I mumbled, turning around to face the road again. I knew he wasn't going to, but at least I could try. I hoped that he would just continue to drive, but then again I wanted him to bring it up. I wanted to ask him so many things. "That bastard showed you, didn't he?" He showed you someone shift into a werewolf. What else did he say? What other bullshit has he told you? Four's deep voice growled out, as I felt his warm hand reach out and land on my cheek, softly pulling my face around so I was now looking at him. My anger flared up as I felt rage from inside. Tom may have just been using me for revenge, but he told me the truth, and I only known him for hours. I was with for months, and not once did he mention the fact he was a werewolf. At least he told me the bloody truth. More than you ever done, I raged. If he got too angry, then I was allowed to be outraged at this. Are you fucking with me right now? Are you being serious? You're actually defending him. You're defending that monster after what he did to you. Four's loud voice made me want to shrink to the back of my seat, cower away, but I wasn't going to let him win this one, not this time. I'm not defending him. Can't I be pissed that for months you didn't mention anything? I was up in that room not having a bloody notion about anything. Do you even care? Oh, how confused I was. Tom may have told me just to get back at you, but at least he had the decency to actually tell me the truth. I breathed. I was expecting for to do something drastic, go crazy at me, but his silence only scared me more. He was never this calm. He closed his eyes for a brief second, as if he had to calm himself down, before he said something back to me. I was trying to protect you. Can't you see that everything I have done is for your benefit only? Now that you're open to all the werewolf stuff, you're in a lot more danger. Baby, do you know the amount of enemies I have? Tom is just one of many, and many of them would use you to get to me. He drifted off. He turned to face me, his now blue eyes with no traces of gold looking into my own. He had calmed down now, as he reached over his body, leaning towards mine. I knew I was going to have to tell you, and trust me, I was going to. I just wanted to wait until the right time, when you trusted me, and didn't look at me as such a monster anymore. For continued, his voice dropping deeper, as he pushed strands of hair out of my face. I sighed. I wanted to believe him, and the more he talked, the more I got lost into the different colors of blue of his eyes, and everything he said I didn't doubt. His hot breath fanned my face, and all I wanted to do was reach over and press my lips against his. Something clicked in my head. He was still the heartless man who stole you from your bedroom, and refused to let you see or visit your family. Nothing has changed. I quickly moved away from him, shrinking back in my seat, keeping my eyes stuck on the ground, kicking my feet on the floor of the car, as I felt his eyes burn into my head. Just drive, I mumbled, attempting to change the subject, regretting that I even mentioned anything. His fist connected with the wheel, as he cursed under his breath, before he yanked open his door, making his way out, slamming it shut. My eyes followed his movement in confusion, as his large frame took large strides around the front of the car, pulling open my door. No, I'm not letting you do this. We are sorting this out now. I'm sorry, all right. I'm fucking sorry for being the worst mate you could ever have. I know I've said some and did some shitty things to you, but please, Emily, I just don't want to lose you. Four's voice was the softest I've ever heard him speak before, so quiet that it was barely even above a whisper. He held his tan hand out to me, and I stared at it for a moment before grabbing it and letting him pull me out of my seat, not because I was scared that he would get angry, because I wanted to. All I want is for you to forgive me, Emily. I can't take back what I've done, but I'll try. I'll try to be less possessive. I can't promise that I'll be fucking amazing, but I can promise you, Emily, I will try. He sighed as his hands went to my waist, as he pushed me against the car door, causing it to slam shut. For once I believed him. For once the sparks that erupted from his touch didn't make me feel sick, or how his hot breath fanned my face didn't scare me. Hi, I'm Emily, I mumbled, holding up my hand for him to shake. If I was going to get past everything, we would need a fresh start. He shook his head, the corners of his mouth turning up slightly, as he let out a chuckle before he connected his hand to mine, pulling me up to his height and placing his lips on mine. 30 Emily's POV. I ran my hand along the edges of the car seat, my eyes flickering to the right to see four in the same position, one hand hanging loosely on the wheel while the other was stretched over on my knee. My eyes glanced outside to see the same scenery I have been looking at for the past hour of driving on the road: green tears after trees lined up creating a forest atmosphere. My eyes glanced in the mirror to see the black jeeps following behind, as they have done since we left. For most of the journey I was sleeping and Ford just woke me up an hour ago asking if I needed to go to the bathroom or anything. I felt weird, my heart believed Ford's words. I thought he was actually going to try change, but there was still a feeling that I shouldn't get my hopes up and be prepared to be stuck up in that bedroom. But what did this mean? Did he mean he was going to actually let me explore around the lands? Let me see all the things he has been hiding from me, or was all the stuff coming out of his mouth empty promises? I shook my head, shaking the negative thoughts out of my head. This was a fresh start, I can't think about the past events. He was going to try, and that's all that mattered. I felt his hand squeeze my knee, as my eyes snapped to his to see that his were flickering from me to the road. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his eyebrows furrowing in confusion, as he was genuinely interested in what was going on inside my head. If he'd asked me this before, I would have been angry that I couldn't even keep my thoughts private, but now I could tell by his face he was just asking out of curiosity. I just shrugged in response. I couldn't exactly say that I was worried that he was going to lock me up and shield me from the outside world, now could I? I knew he couldn't change overnight, and his temper was going to take time to control. I leaned my head back in the seat, closing my eyes, letting the quiet sound of the radio take over once again. I wasn't tired, I actually wanted to just get out and run. My legs had been cramped in the same spot for that long. After a few minutes of just feeling Ford's warm hand on my knee, I felt him squeeze it this time. I peeked my eyes open, glancing over to him to see that the car was now no longer moving. "I want you to forgive me and trust me, but I know it's not that easy. I kept you from your family, Emily, and trust me, it was the hardest thing to hear you cry at night, and not being able to tell you it was okay, because I knew it was a lie. I know nothing I can do can take back all those months, but I'm willing to give it a good shot." Ford sighed, shaking his head. My eyebrows furrowed in confusion as he spoke. I thought we had already gone over this morning. My gaze then left his eyes to look out the front window to see the house that I'd thought I'd be spending a boring summer at. My eyes then flashed back to his wide. What was he trying to do? Was he messing with me just to get me upset or something? "Go. I'll be back for you in a few hours, love." His next words shocked me, and it took me a few moments for them to register in my head, as I had to make sure that I had just heard right. I pounced forward, wrapping my arms around his neck, earning a small breath of laughter escape from his lips, as he reached behind me, clicking of my belt, and pulling my whole body over so I was now straddling him in the front seat. But I didn't care. I didn't care about anything that happened before now. He was letting me spend time with my grandma alone. He was giving me something I never thought he would even consider. "Go quick before I change my mind," he mumbled. I hoped he was joking, but to be sure I quickly pulled open his door and jumped out of the car. There was so much I wanted to say to her, ask her, and it would give me another opportunity to ring my family. Tell them I was finally okay, that for the first time in months I felt happy. "Hey! No kiss for that." Ford's hand gripped my own, stopping me from moving any further. I turned to see a smile played on his face, as I leaned down, quickly placing my lips on his only for a second as I pulled away, my lips tingling. I quickly turned around and began running towards the house I thought I'd never enter again, hearing Ford's laugh in the distance as I got further away. I smiled at my grandma as she poured another cup of tea into my mug that had already been refilled 4 times in the last hour, as she shoveled as many treats into me as she could. It was now dark outside, and after hours of just endless conversations, crying, talking and some more crying, we had finally both calmed ourselves down and began to eat dinner. Not that I was hungry from the amount of cookies she basically shoved down my throat. That day Dylan brought you to meet me broke my heart. I wanted to pull you back, of course, and when you started crying all I wanted to do was comfort you, but I knew it would make things worse. I knew that the only place for you was with 4. It gave me comfort knowing you were safe." She continued her story, as she proceeded to scoop too many spuds on my plate. She knew about the whole werewolf thing, which I already assumed days ago, when I was thinking about how my whole life was a lie. She had grown up here, had my dad here, and basically grown up with wolves. That confirmed the fact that my parents knew, which I kind of hoped they didn't, but I guess they already did. We knew it was a risk letting a teenager come here, but I thought that there was a slim chance of you finding a mate, or even having a mate. I thought if you didn't go to their territory, then you would be safe. I should have kept a closer eye on you. Grandma's voice wobbled once more, as she sat down across from me. My eyes stung from the amount of crying I had done. Firstly, when I first seen her, I burst into tears, then a little while later, when I called my parents, and got to speak to Kyle, and now. It's not your fault, he would have found me sometime. I attempted to lighten the mood. I knew I had only a little while left, and so I didn't want to spend it crying. She gave me a weak smile before wiping her eyes, as she dived into another conversation, her eyes lightening up, as she talked about the latest Kardashian drama. I just hoped that this would be a regular thing. I sighed, pushing my wet locks out of my face as I ran the brush through my hair. I had now took a shower, and felt less disgusting as I tried to steer my mind away from his hands touching my body. My clothes that I brought from England were still packed in the suitcase in the same exact spot as I'd left it. I would now be finally able to wear clothes my own size, and not constantly borrow Four's massive t-shirts. I pulled on my jeans. These defiantly were not missed, but I liked the way I had clothes that fitted me, so I wasn't going to complain. I then pulled on one of my jumpers I had packed, tucking it in as I closed the suitcase up again. Hey, the familiar voice of Four made me jump, as I span around to see his large frame leaning in the doorframe. I smiled, although I didn't feel like smiling. I wanted to stay here with Grandma. There was still so much I wanted to talk about, and I needed to spend more time talking to my family. But I knew I couldn't say anything. I didn't want to risk any future opportunities. I was grateful to him for this. I needed this. It showed that his words weren't just empty. He was going to try give me more freedom. He was going to treat me like an adult and not a child. His eyes glanced towards the suitcase before he made his way into the room, picking it up effortlessly. It was filled with clothes, as I packed 2 months' worth of outfits that I never got to wear. I'm going to miss seeing you wearing my t-shirts all the time, he smirked, holding out his hand for me to grab. I started at it before looking up to his face. He was changing, and that's all that mattered. That once cold stone man who stared at me with the hardest expression wasn't there anymore. It was the real Four, and for that I grabbed his hand. 31 Emily's P.O.V. I tugged on his wrist harder in attempt to make his body move faster, as his feet trudged even slower, until he came to a complete stop midway down the hallway, the elevator only a few steps away, causing my own feet to come to a stop, as his grip pulled me back closer to him. I snapped around, staring daggers at his blue eyes, which were staring down at me, glinting slightly, as a small smirk played on his face, as he watched me every second that passed, knowing how impatient I was to get going. Not so fast, love. There are a few things I need to talk to you about, he chuckled, prying my grip of his wrist, as he leaned his broad frame against the wall. Your hand doesn't leave mine. I mean it, Emily, you don't know where you're going. I don't want you wandering off. You have never seen my people, but they know of you. There will be a few stares, but I've already wanted them. The pack land is far too large to show you all today, love, so you'll have be patient, Four explained, as he took my hand and wrapped it in his, pulling me towards the elevator. I rolled my eyes as a response, biting on the inside of my cheek to stop myself from making a remark. He was trying to be civil, and I didn't want to mess things up and be stuck in that bedroom again. My eyes scanned the scene playing out in front of me, getting wider by the second, as my gaze landed on the street. Four had finally stopped at letting me look for more than 2 seconds, as he previously was. My eyebrows furrowed in confusion, as my eyes followed the road lined with shops and littered with children, women and men running around. A girl that didn't look past the age of 21, child balanced on her hip, and another tugging on her hand, pulling her towards one of the shops. I glanced up at Four to see he was too preoccupied to look around him, as he was reaching his hand into his back pocket, pulling out something. Ever since we had stepped foot out of the elevator, Four had been almost always silent. His grip on my hand tightened like it was claimed on there. His mouth was set in a straight line, as no trace of a smile ever being placed there was evident. He gave the same hard cold look to anyone that even looked up at him, which was just one man, but as soon as his eyes met Four's they flew to the ground again, not bothering to glance at me. My eyes skimmed over the people. They looked so normal. They looked like humans, not the beasts that they actually were. I felt Four's pull on my hand, as he began taking more of his long strides down the street, pulling me closer so that our sides were touching. I let my eyes follow up to Four's face once more, only to see that his other hand was now holding a cigarette, as he opened his mouth puffing out smoke. I stopped in my tracks against Four's pull as I stared up at him, wide eyes. Was this another thing that I didn't know about him? He stopped once he realized I wasn't beside him, glancing back at me, his eyebrows furrowing in confusion, seeing my confused face, before he glanced around him, as if remembering that we were in public. "Emily, what's the matter?" His tone took me by surprise, laced with annoyance, so cold compared to just half an hour ago when it was laced with comfort. I placed my hand on his wrist, attempting to pry his hand grip of me. If he was going to speak to me like that, then I wasn't going to bow down to him. I wasn't going to be the same little naive girl like before. This seemed to anger him further, as his jaw clenched, and he then grabbed my other hand, prying of his own, before he glanced up for a moment before I felt him push me towards a building. I opened my mouth to begin to shout at him, only for my mouth to be covered by his large hand, as I felt his other arm wrap around my waist and pull me over his broad shoulders. I began to push into his back, only to be ignored when he pushed a door open before taking strides inside, and I heard it slam shut. Before I could regain my balance, in an instant I was off Four's shoulders and now pressed against the wall. I felt his hot breath on my neck as he took deep breaths, his chest moving heavily as he tried to contain his anger. I swallowed the lump that was beginning to form in my chest, my eyes wandering around his bloody perfect face, forgetting in the moment why I was so angry when I caught glimpse of the cigarette that was hanging out of his mouth. I reached up, cringing as my fingers touched the death trap, pulling it straight out of his mouth and dropping it to the floor, not wanting to touch it for more than a second before I reached over my vein-covered foot, stomping on it. Four let out a breath, shaking his head, as I turned to face him one more, the closeness of his face to mine only making my heart rate pick up as I stared down at my feet. I was pissed off at him, and I wanted it to stay that way. "You're unbelievable, Emily, fucking unbelievable." He shook his head before regaining his full height, his hot breath leaving my face, as I saw the corners of his mouth turn up. "I didn't know you smoked," I mumbled, pushing myself off the wall, stepping beside him so the room could be in my full view. My eyes wandered around to see an office desk littered with papers, and a large chair in the center of the room. I looked to see him shrugging in response, as he looked at me, his eyes not one of those cold monster eyes he held a few minutes ago, but the same eyes filled with love. "You're so bipolar sometimes, Four. You act so bloody kind one minute, and the next you're such a dick," I continued, shaking my head. I wasn't going to let this one drop. He let out a breathy laugh at me, as if what I was saying was a joke. "It's an act. Do you think I want to be fucking harsh to you in front of them? I'm an alpha, Emily, and if I want respect from my people, then they need to fear me, and how are they going to fear a man whose only weakness is their mate? I need to show them I have no weaknesses." He raised his voice slightly as he shook his head. "I thought everyone had a mate." I asked, what would make him any different for caring for his mate if everyone did? He closed his eyes for a brief second, taking his hand up to his head, and for a brief second I thought he was getting angrier. You to the corner of his lips turned up slightly. "Love, you're so fucking innocent," he mumbled, breathing out a laugh, as he strided over towards me, his hands grabbing at the edges of my denim jacket. "Yes, baby, everyone has a mate. But I'm an alpha, Emily. If my people see me letting you act like that in public, then their opinion on me will change. Don't get me wrong, love, act what you like in front of me. I enjoy seeing someone stand up to me, but when we are out, that's when it can't happen," For explained. I furrowed my eyebrows, biting my lip, as I attempted to hold back a smart response that probably wasn't necessary, small baby steps. Then since you were being a dick, you can make it up to me. I let a smile grow on my face after a few moments' silence, as he looked at me this time a confused look wrote over his face. Haven't I done enough? He groaned, his expression playing a small smirk on his face, narrowing his eyes once I pushed the side of his arm. For once things were actually good. If you're craving more of Emily's adventure, don't forget to hit subscribe and ring that notification bell.